Hi there, and welcome to Part 5. Thank you for joining in, or if you're a first-time watcher, please go back to my welcome video, and it'll explain in thorough the poor quality of the reason for the poor quality of video, the non-script, and why I'm doing this on my traumatic life that led me to, or traumatizing life that led me to trauma therapy and the benefits that I got at the age of which I am now going on 60. In 2024, but I began trauma therapy in 2022. Anyway, so my mom made the decision to give my dad another try, and as I explained, there was rules she had put down, but I didn't know about the rules. I was excited about going back. My dad had left Jacksonville, and I don't remember if we followed him down or if we went on our own, but I do remember my aunt that we were staying with was so upset that my mom made this decision, rightfully so, out of care. But all her kids, my cousins were gone, and they weren't there. And I don't know if it was a week or just a couple of days that my mom made the decision before we left. But everything was different. The house was quiet. My aunt wasn't talking, and my mom was. I mean, there was just silence. And as a child, you know through silence, or if there is a conversation, you know something's wrong by their non. You can just feel the tensity in the air and the nonverbal expressions. But what I did leave out, there was this man that lived next door, and I didn't understand it at the time, but it was explained to me. He was um, as they put it, he was not stable, and he was a grown man, and he would come to visit his parents that were right next door on weekends and stay with them on the weekends. And he would stand. I remember him. He would have his clothes were always pressed, and they were tucked in. He wore slacks and a dress shirt and dress shoes. And I mean, he looked like he could have been a Mr. Rogers on that program, whatever it was, Welcome to My Neighborhood, or Wouldn't You Want to Be My Neighbor? Uh, but he would stand in the front yard, and when a car would go by, he'd flick them a bird and just, and I just, as a kid, I found that so interesting. And I would go up and talk to him. And then when my aunt or my mom or my cousins would see me over there talking to him, they would call me in. And they would tell me, you got to be careful of him. He's not well. He's got a mental condition. And he only comes home on the weekend, and they explained the whole thing to me. But I found him to be fascinating. If he has a mental condition, why is he so neatly dressed? And he was always nice to me. And I don't remember the talks we had, but I can remember looking up at him, and when a car would go by, he would shoot him a bird. I mean, he wouldn't yell anything. He would just express through his hand. And I remember when we were leaving, I was going to miss him. I was really fascinated by him. Maybe because I had undiagnosed mental disorders, and I was able to relate to him on some level I didn't know about. Anyway, so we left, and we went back home. And I remember when we got back home to the house, it was, I don't know, it was just empty without my brother Mike. But I filled the emptiness by going to the streets. There was like 9 of us kids in the neighborhood that hung out. And they were happy to see me. And, I shared stories about where I was. And I don't remember when it was, but my mom and dad, they had told me we signed. There was a church around the corner that I didn't get into earlier. That every Friday night they would have a volleyball game in the back for kids of the neighborhood, and we would play volleyball, and then we would attend a service that was for kids, and they would serve us soda and donuts, and this was like 7 o'clock at night, and then send us home. And wow, I can remember being like Beavis, and my mom was like, "Why do they serve soda and donuts? Oh my goodness!" And then send you home. But anyway, they were having a summer camp, and my mom told me that we enrolled you into the summer. No, no, okay, sorry. No, my friends, two of my friends were going, and they told me about it. And I told my mom I wanted to go, so she signed me up for it. So the church camp was for 2 weeks, and we went to the church camp. And once again, being around faith-based adults and kids, there was such a peace. I mean, I was an entirely different person, but by this time, children, and I'm speaking for the whole population of children, but and what I've learned in my studies, we can notice a difference. We're not idiots. We might act like idiots, but we're not. And I noticed there was an internal peace, and I was a different individual. There was a clarity with my mind. I was there was no fear. And like I didn't know at the time, but I wasn't walking on eggshells like I was around my dad. So the church camp was for 2 weeks. And when it was over, that night, my mom told me, when my mom and dad picked me up at the bus at the church, they told me, we're moving into a newer house in a different neighborhood. And I just lost it. Once again, rekindling friendships. I was going to lose friends again, like I just happened when we went to Jacksonville, and then what little friends I established, and that guy next door with the mental disorder, and my cousins, leaving them, and now we're leaving again, and I was not happy. So the following, I don't remember how much time there was, but I told my friends goodbye, and of course my mom, like it's always said, oh, we're only moving a few miles away, which was about 10 miles, if that. We'll come back, don't worry. You'll make new friends. And for a child, especially for somebody like me, that was devastating. Got to go through all that picking on again. What the? Anyway, so we go to the new house, and it was nice. It was in a very nice neighborhood, and the lawn was well kept. The house was nice, all new furniture. I don't know what happened to the light. All new furniture, and there was nothing old from the old house in this house. And what I had found out years down the road when my mom and dad had that talk in Jacksonville, she told him, we'll come back under these conditions. A, I get control of the bank account. B, you ever lay a hand on me or Johnny, we are gone. I want a new neighborhood, a new house. I am embarrassed by our neighbors for what you have done to me. I want new furniture. She just took control, and my dad agreed. And from that moment on, he never laid a hand on her again. And he had, like I said, he only had punched me in the stomach once, which I'll get into later. But he changed. And so on my street, there was a gang of kids. And at this point in time in life, my dad was taking me to the barber every Saturday, and I had to get that Marine Corps flat top haircut. And I had this new haircut, and before, he would just let me grow it, and it looked like a mop. I had such curly hair, and I mean, long curls, healthy hair. Now I only have that in my eyebrows, but I shave my eyebrows. And anyway, I would go out front and just sit on the trunk of the car and watch all these kids play. Girls and boys. I mean, just a bunch of them. And for the first couple of days, they just ignored me. And my mom would edge me, go talk, go talk. And I was just terrified. I was more comfortable just sitting there being in fear than taking a step in fear and introducing myself. I really didn't know how to. So anyway, the group of kids one day finally came over to me, and one girl, she says, "Hey, what's up, skin flute?" And they all started laughing. And I remember thinking, here we go. So they introduced themselves and I started playing with them. And then finally I got the courage, and because they kept calling me skin flute. And I said, "What's skin flute?" And they said, "Because of your haircut." And years late, as an adult, a couple years back, I remember looking that word up. And it really wasn't a nice word. It was kind of derogatory. But hey, that's kids. So I'm in a new neighborhood. One of the kids who lived two houses down from me, he was a couple years older. And I ended up in time seeing him as a father figure or more like an older brother. I just really idolized him. He played soccer. Uh, his dad had ran out and never came back, which years down the road I would find out it was connected with the mafia. So we really don't know what happened to him. And he had an older brother, Kenny, like I did, who was getting ready to go into the Air Force. And I just really took a liking to him. And he took me under his wing, and he would teach me to play soccer, which I ended up playing soccer at the local Optimist Field. And the other kids were my age. And there was a girl in the neighborhood that, man, she was overly developed. I mean, everybody thought she was 18. And we would play kill the man with the ball. And whenever one of us kids, boys, got the ball, we would always throw it to her so we could tackle her. And she always wore a tube top, and we'd always try to pull down the tube top, and everybody thought it was funny. And anyway, I once again had found my dad's stash of Triple X magazines, and I shared them with everybody. They would come over, and we just like go through them, and then everybody would run home their separate ways, and bump, 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 and then we'd all meet out in the street. Sadly, I'm sure they didn't wash their hands like I did. Yeah, I know, a little bit too much information. Oh, that's creepy. So I'm in a new neighborhood, and I start playing baseball at the local Optimist Field, and once again I'm underdeveloped. And for tryouts, I end up for the remainder of 4 years playing baseball there. I was always picked to be on the worst team, and our coaches were kind of like that movie Bad News Bears, minus the alcohol while we were practicing. But I don't remember us really ever winning a game. But I hung in there, and I strive to. I did get better. I was hitting the ball. I got a whole lot of doubles and singles. I would play second base, center field, right field. They tried me at shortstop. They tried me at third base. I really didn't have the arm, the accuracy. They tried me at catcher. My knees would lock up on me. They were so bony. Oh my goodness. Uh, and I started playing soccer, and the kids on the soccer team were really good. I mean, they were overly developed or normally developed. And I had the speed, but I never had the coordination. I mean, they would put me at wing because I had the speed, but when I was running with the ball and it was time to kick it over to the center of the field or to an open player, my mind would just overly activate, and I would panic and get this heavy burden that people are watching me. And my mind would just go berserk, and I'd go to kick the ball, and I would miss it, flying up in the air like Charlie Brown with Lucy removing the football before he kicked it. And some of the kids really tried to teach me, but I remember two of them just really annihilated. I mean, just terribly. You suck. You can't play. Get off the field. And once again, I focused on the neck. There was more positive input, even from the coaches. But the only two kids, and I remember them to this day, boy, I tell you, man. Anyway, yeah, happy thoughts. Uh, I would focus on the negative, like did as a child and as I continue to into adulthood. Negative for people that are suffering trauma, which you're going to learn. Negative, you can have one person be negative towards you out of a group of 10 people in a room, and you will focus on that one negative will destroy you, which for a lot will end up becoming people pleasing. You will do whatever you can to gain the attention and the acceptance of that one person, and really not having the values from your father, because my dad, he would support me financially, buy me everything that I needed for the sports or as a kid, but he wasn't there for me. He never went to a practice. He never went to one game. I didn't have that father figure from him. My mom was at every game. She would drop me off at practice, or I would walk, or she would come pick me up. My mom was supportive, but my dad was the only father that I remember. I'm sure there was other fathers that was not in the stand and supporting his child. I never had that support from my father to learn how to use coping skills, to just, if someone didn't like me, just to ignore it. It wasn't that big of a deal. But he did instill in me, because he did ask me one time about how practice went, and I said I was on the sidelines. They're not playing me, and I was talking to him for support. And my dad was never athletic, so he couldn't teach me. But he told me, he said, look, instead of sitting on the bench and just waiting to be called in and sulking, as he called it, feeling sorry for oneself, get up on that sideline and cheer on the players on the field. Show enthusiasm, and the coach will hear that and say, what is that? He goes, look, if you're not playing, at least support others that are on the field. You got to get up there. You got to be a man. Remember, Marine Corps. If he can do it, I can do it. If he can do it, I can do it. Marine Corps. Anyway, so I started doing that. And I'll be darned, one of the coaches looked down the sideline at one of the practices and says, who's making all that noise? And he goes, is that you? Johnny, get over here. We're going to put you in. And that's how I started getting in. So that was really the only positive feedback that I had from my father. And there's other stories going on with my father coming up in part 6, because he had made he told me, he said, look, your brother went into the Air Force. Your other brother went into the Army. I am going to, now that you're becoming of age, meaning puberty, getting here in funny places, I'm going to make sure you go into the Marines. So my grooming, or being raised to be a Marine, gets stronger and really takes a turn for the worse. Thank you. Glad you attended, and look forward to getting your comments, and hopefully we'll get your comments on part 6. Thank you, and have a great day.